Okay, hello everyone. My name's Caitlin, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about my substance awareness program. So, the population that I chose to focus on was the LGBT community, specifically the LGBT community, because they are more at risk of developing a substance abuse disorder, especially evolved around opioid addiction. So, I wanted to focus in on that. My program title is Preventing Addiction Through Skills, or it can just break down into path. It's an LGBTQ inclusive treatment care program. So, a little introduction on the population. Like I said before, substance abuse is very common in the LGBT community. It often is used as a coping mechanism that to cope with the discrimination that they face on an everyday basis. And something I got from an article that I thought I would share with you all to show how much this is affecting the community is compared to heterosexual adults. There was a survey in 2015 that was done that showed that lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults reported twice as much prevalence of prescription opioid use in the past year as opposed to, their heterosexual counterparts. And like I said before, this has a lot to do with the discrimination that they do face. Also, something that is very needed in the community is more LGBTQ specific treatment, which is why I wanted to kind of create a plan to have that kind of treatment in place. And it just says here that LGBTQ specific opioid use disorder treatment is something that can minimize the barriers in LGBT communities finding treatment and recovering. A lot of times they are just in this addiction or they're at risk of this addiction and they just kind of stay in that stagnant place because there's not providers that are being inclusive to them. They kind of feel judged when they go into these spaces that aren't LGBT inclusive and that are just full of straight people. So they choose not to seek treatment. And then right here, I just have two charts that could kind of just reiterate what I'm saying a little bit more. So on the left, we just see some stats based in the LGBT community and opioid use. So as you can see, opioid use is very high in the community as opposed to something like heroin. And 29% of the community using opioids are gay and lesbian people as opposed to 13% being heterosexual people. So you can see that the percentages are way up compared to LGBTQ people and heterosexual people in opioid use. And just right here, it just says the LGBTQ adults are nearly 2 times as likely as heterosexual adults to experience substance abuse. So, kind of like I told you before, they're at twice as much prevalence. And 1.4 million of LGBTQ adults have misused opioids, which has led to 96.9% of total opioid users in the LGBT community to also misuse their prescription medications. So, just some treatment provider recommendations that I created. Like I said before, there is minimal LGBTQ inclusive treatments being provided. So, if you are providing LGBTQ inclusive treatment for substance abuse, it's just important that those providers address certain things before giving this treatment. So providers should explicitly address experiences of multi-level LGBTQ related stressors or social cultural influences. So they should just kind of have some awareness of what these participants and these clients are coming in and what they're facing, these discriminations. Um, so they also should embrace cultural humility. So as a guiding practice. So again, just kind of being aware of their own biases and aware of their own cultural and how that culture can affect their participants. If they're a heterosexual person and they are trained in these LGBTQ practices, they shouldn't force their heterosexual norms on them because their norms might be different from an LGBTQ person's norms. And it's just important that these treatment providers do all these things because it's really important that the community feels like they're understood and that they're not being judged, and they want to feel like the person providing them treatment kind of has some type of understanding on their experiences. And I just put a little quote here that was said by an actual psychotherapist and a clinical social worker who works with the LGBT community. They just said that the pain associated with the social stigma of being LGBTQ, of living in a culture that for the most part is homophobic and heterosexist, is traumatic. And I think that quote is very important because, the majority of LGBTQ people's experiences are traumatic, which leads them to things like substance abuse. So it's just really important that the people providing them treatment understand that and know how to work with that. So the program level slash category of my program, I wanted to create a program that was selective. I think that a selective program is important because the LGBT community is kind of at risk as a whole, of developing opioid addiction. And like I said before, it has been shown that they are at higher risk to develop opioid addiction, but they don't have enough resources to help. So it's important to have this selective program since the population is so much at risk. It can kind of help them a little bit more. So, a little bit of summary of my program. So, I wanted my program to kind of be based around a group process. I think that a group process is important because it just shows participants that there's others in the community who are dealing with the same thing. It gives people resources, it gives people more people to meet to have a lending hand. Um, so, I just wanted to make sure also that the people running the program in some way were part of the LGBT community. It would be nice if everyone identified as the LGBT community, but it would also be nice if just someone in their family was LGBTQ and they kind of still had an understanding of the experiences, whether it be firsthand or not. Um, and I just think a group prevention program can benefit the community by providing them with resources for recovery, as well as long-term housing if they needed food, education, and it can really just provide support from others who are also dealing with the same struggles and they don't feel like they're alone and they can just, help each other in society grow. So our mission statement, our mission statement is simple. I'll just read it off. To establish an alliance that engages and welcomes all individuals in the LGBTQ plus community to create a safe and exclusive space to prevent and reduce opioid use. The purpose of the program is to allow an already marginalized community to feel at home in a prevention setting and break down the barriers to a safe treatment plan in order to guide safe and successful substance-free lives. So the goals of our program, obviously, we wanted to create a program that is LGBTQ inclusive. Like I said before, there's not many, and we really wanted to create one that tailors to the LGBT community so they have the same fighting chance as heterosexuals. And it has shown that the community often strays away from treatment due to, various reasons such as being judged or being discriminated against, just not having workers that really understand them. And we really wanted to change that and kind of rework that so that, we do understand them, they don't feel discriminated against, they don't feel judged, and they feel just as equal as heterosexual people seeking the same type of treatment. So, something important in a prevention program is to work to reduce risk factors and increase protective factors. So, something we want to do to kind of reduce these risk factors is just advocating, for policymakers to properly fund these programs and ensure that they receive the same treatment as heterosexual people. It seemed that LGBT communities often are low funded. They have no funding at all. They have to fundraise themselves. So we just want to try to get policymakers to try to put that same foot forward as they put for heterosexual people, as well. Just creating programs for families of these participants, helping them, understand why they are at risk for opioid use, why they're using substances, kind of educating them on accepting those behaviors and learning how to not enable and learning how to not say things that are judgmental and just kind of, learn from them as well. And that also goes into increasing acceptance from family and peers. So, a lot of times LGBTQ individuals are often, discriminated against by their own families at higher rates than the society. So just creating programs that they can kind of learn where they're coming from and kind of try to understand, and just providing more safe spaces for the community to meet and engage. So, like I said, that's one of our goals with the program, having a place where they can go, whether it's once a week or twice a week, and talk and engage their feelings and feel safe. So let's get into a little bit of stakeholders and partners. So obviously, to have a successful program, you do kind of need to have funding, you need to have money, you need to have people that are backing you up as well. Um, I'll get more into what the Covenant House is when we get to logistics, but that is the place where we are going to hold our group. So it's going to be one of our leading partners, right? We need their location, we need their setting, and majority of our participants we hope would come from their population. And I'll talk a little bit more about what their population actually is soon. Other key stakeholders in our program will just be program staff and participants, right? They are what we need to make the program run. If we don't have participants, if we don't have staff, we don't have a program. Also, healthcare providers, educators, policymakers, government officials, public health officials, we need them. They help fund our program, they help promote our program. If we don't have the support of these officials, then we don't really have a program because we're not going to have funding. We're not going to have all those things to keep our program running and successful. So it's really important that we promote our program to them and we show why it's working. Also, the Department of Human Services in New Jersey, they will be a major stakeholder. They often create funding for different substance use programs throughout the state. So we would hope that we could show them why we need the funding and why our program will be successful as well. And then up top, I just have a little chart. These are some things that stakeholders also are: investors, society, employees, regulators, suppliers, customers, creditors. So kind of some of the people that I mentioned in the slide. So, model and program topics. So, the theoretical model that I wanted to base my program off of is community organization theory and health belief model. This theory, it really is important because it is based around empowering communities. We can also take the LGBTQ community into consideration with that to improve health and like promote participation to kind of increase health behaviors in these communities. And I think that's really important because the LGBT community oftentimes they just have each other to help promote and to help empower each other. And I just think that's really important because if they can't empower each other, then who else is when everyone else in society is kind of looking down on them and discriminating against them in some way. So it's really important to create that empowerment within the community so that they know if someone else is not there for them, that they have each other. Some of the topics that I want to touch upon is role play mock interviews or mock sessions, such as like empty chair sessions. I think those are really important. Those are very helpful. Um, so, participants can sit and have an empty chair session with someone that either triggers substance use or has triggered them in some way due to their identity and kind of work that out. Discussing the topic of forgiveness and resentment, not only with others, but with themselves. A lot of time addicts, they know they can't forgive themselves. They have a lot of resentment, especially with those whose identity, like sexual identity, like in the LGBT community, also can give them some type of resentment. Like, people resent them for being who they are. They kind of resent themselves for letting those feelings come out and not just being the norm, being straight. So it's important to work through that because their identity triggers can be a trigger for their substance use. And we are going to make sure that all the group leaders will receive some LGBTQ plus trauma informed care training so that they're more successful in helping the participants be successful. So, some program logistics. So, meeting date and time, we will have meetings on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So, Mondays we would do 4 p.m. to 5:45. Wednesdays we would do 2 p.m. to 3:45, and Fridays we would do 12 p.m. to 1:45. I thought that an hour and 45-minute session is pretty good. Also having some flexibility, having it 3 times a week on different times so people have a better chance of attending. And there will be 2 separate groups during the week, 3 separate groups, sorry. The group lengths will be, like I said, an hour and 45 minutes, and the groups will last, like 13 weeks long, approximately 3 months, which is, typical outpatient pro help. how a typical outpatient program lasts. So we just kind of wanted to do that. And the setting, like I said before, is the Covenant House in Newark. The Covenant House is an organization that provides housing for LGBTQ plus individuals. They provide dining halls, classrooms, clothes, etc. So we will kind of take our population from them. They do have individuals who are struggling with substance abuse in the Covenant House. So it will be good to take our population from there, as well as others from the outside can come in. And they often do stay in the Covenant House. They're allowed to stay in a bed for about 3 to 4 months, which is perfect for our group because our group will last about 3 months. So we can constantly have a turnover of different people. So evaluation, pre-sus post assessment Likert Scout surveys, I think those are good. They're kind of surveys that you get that are graded on a strongly disagree to like strongly agree scale. So say like disagree, strongly disagree, indifferent, agree, strongly disagree. And we could just ask the participants some questions about the program and the effectiveness. And we can, assess that, find a percentage of people who strongly disagree, strongly agree on some important questions, and we can report these findings to our stakeholders, such as those government officials who are providing this funding, and show if this is being effective and show why, have the stats in front of them. Marketing, we can have some flyers, it's the easiest of marketing strategy. Have some flyers around Jersey City, the Newark area, Covenant House. Also get some things posted on the website so people can see. We can create some social media pages, creating Instagrams, Twitters, Facebooks. Social media is a big marketing strategy, so having a social media page for a group can be important. And we can also think about getting some funding to get like a billboard in Newark or like a commercial as well on TV. People always watching TV, people are driving by, just to market us on a little bigger scale. So since my group, my parentive project was based on group process, it's really important to have an informed consent. For a group process, if you don't know what informed consent is, this is something that treatment providers give their participants before group so that they understand the logistics, they agree, and they kind of know what they're getting into before they actually step foot into the group and participate. So I kind of created my own little informed consent tailored to my program, and I'll just show you it here. So I took the Covenant House logo, um, you know, just the goal of the group, the success of the group is dependent on the trust between yourself, group members, and the group facilitator. This document before you was created to inform you about what can be expected from group therapy and the group facilitator. So then we just have some bullet points so they understand group therapy, they understand what it is, they understand our relationship between the facilitators and the participants. They understand their role, so they understand that each group member has equal say. Potential benefits of group therapy. It's important to have this in the informed consent because some people don't want to go to group therapy. They're like, what is this going to help me? And this can show them a little bit that it can help them, better understand personal values, improvement in their relationships, coming to terms with self-identity, gaining a support system. Knowing the risk of group therapy, you also want them to know that there can be some discomfort. Can be some feelings that come up that can be uncomfortable. And just knowing that if these feelings do come up, they can discuss with the group or with the group facilitator if they need. Let me go back. Talking about confidentiality, what happens in the group stays in the group. That they agree to confidentiality, that they are consistent with attendance, because if they're not consistent, it affects the group. Emergencies, just some emergencies. If there is emergencies, you can call the Covenant House, you can call 911 just in case they need someone. And then I thought it was important to, in the signature part for the client's preferred name, if they are transgender, if they have a dead name, to ask them what their preferred name is, their pronouns or gender identity, just kind of something that can make the LGBT community feel a little more comfortable before they even step into the treatment. They can say, oh, okay, this facilitator is asking my preferred name, my pronouns. Maybe they are a little self-aware of the LGBTQ community struggles and that people don't call us by our pronouns. So that can just, aid them a little more to want to join the treatment. So some ground rules, these are some ground rules I created for the group. Every group can have different ground rules. I just thought these were important. Respect other members' opinions and thoughts. past when you're feeling uncomfortable, have sensitivity in regards to the feelings of others, keep the highest form of confidentiality with other group members when information is being shared, say oops when you realize you have stated something that you wish you could take back, and say ouch when another member's words may have affected you in something. I think the last two are very important because sometimes when you're in group, you just end up talking and then you're like, wait, I wish I didn't share that right now. Say oops, we can forget about it. We don't bring it up until you're ready again. Say ouch. Sometimes someone says can offend you a little bit, but instead of lashing out, just say ouch, talk about it, understand why that made you feel that way. So program sessions. So session one, I broke it down to 6 sessions. There could be more than 6 sessions, but I just wanted to keep it not too long. So session one, the most important session. This is the chance where clients have the chance to introduce themselves, and we establish those ground rules. We give them the informed consent. And in this session, we work to identify the triggers that may have led to substance abuse and explore how their identity has affected their drug usage. We will explore minority stress specific triggers such as rejection, internalized homophobia, and transphobia. And this section is expected to get a little emotional. So we will do this for the duration of the session, and then 30 minutes before we close the session, we will talk in a larger group and just make sure that everyone's okay to go home. So in session two, kind of will be a follow-up to session one. We'll make sure everyone's feeling okay. And we'll start the session by just jotting down some things that they think they can do productively instead of using drugs when they get those cravings or those triggers that they talked about in session one. And we will create a coping plan in which they will learn how to anticipate these high-risk sessions successfully. So session three, this is where we will talk about that forgiveness and resentment that I brought up before. So, like I said, not only forgiveness and resentment with themselves and their substance abuse, but with their family, their friends, and the outside world that continue marginalizes them. So we will explore PTSD that these resentments have caused, and clients will work on impact statements together to better understand how these traumas have influenced them, and we will work to decrease and avoid these feelings, decrease avoiding these feelings, sorry, and these individuals who have caused these pains will work to create resilience. So, session four. Session four will kind of be a follow-up to session three, and the clients will role play, like I said before, by doing that empty chair technique. So members of the group will choose one person that has caused them the most resentment or someone they're working to forgive, and they perform this activity. They can even choose the idea of substance abuse and act like they're talking to their substance of choice or that opioid. In session five, we will focus on the idea of being worthy. Um, that's something self-esteem is something that a LGBT community suffers with, especially also addicts as well. So we will work to alter members' thought processes and decision-making and boundary setting, which are all things that can break down an addict's self-esteem and make them feel like they are not worthy of recovery and treatment. And we work with them to make them feel that they are worthy. So in section six, which is the last session, it will work to kind of close out our time. We will share how the group has aided members and their takeaways, and we will have activities where members will make a list of things they're looking forward to outside of the group and things that they're going to work and changing in their lives. We will set up each member with case management services so that when the group is not done, they're just not on their own. They can always come back. They can have someone to talk to, a case manager to help them out. And then these are just my references. You can check these out. These have a lot of good information on LGBT community and opioid abuse and substance abuse and how to deal with them if you are a treatment provider. But yeah, thank you so much for listening to my presentation.